There were a few things the Mennonites do. One of them is the holy kiss. The holy kiss is not on the cheek, it is like lip to lip. Might even be crumbs from last meal still left in their beards. I meet these cult boys. The Mennonites of that area all looked down on the cult family. The cult family was not good enough. Good evening and welcome back to A Fresh Angle. Thank you so much for the support that we've been receiving, the likes and the subscribes. That all helps. And I wanted to say, anybody that wants to ask a question or make a comment, I'm here to answer your questions. The top comment I wanted to respond to was Carrie Lawrence made the statement that she's sorry that I went through this. And whereas it was a hard road, and for many years I was bitter and sorry for myself that I went through this. I say, in the end, when I realize what I have received from this experience, it's something that I would go through again. I have a beautiful family and beautiful children because of this. And, I have a love for art and the ability to make art, which I wouldn't have had otherwise. Anyway, so on with the story. A few days after I arrived, I remember feeling out of place. I had been in the public school, and so I called a meeting with the bishop, and we met at the church. It was just him and I. And I asked him at that time for a pause on my membership. I wanted to be inactive because I guess in a way I didn't feel ready for church membership there with all I had experienced up to this point. Anyway, he gladly accepted my request to make my church membership inactive. But I had been through some rapid changes, and not only that, there were a few things the Mennonites do, and the Amish. One of them is the holy kiss. The holy kiss is taken from a Bible verse where it says to greet each brother with a holy kiss. And they take it very literally, and men greet men and women greet women. And when I say that, it's with a kiss, and it's not on the cheek. It is like lip to lip. Especially these people were very firm on that. If it was cheek to cheek, that was going to be a worldly interpretation of what the Bible said. And I was a germaphobe. I'm going to be real honest. I had a real problem with that. And to come from the public school and then instantly going to greet, and these were well-bearded men. And I'm going to add to that, some of them weren't well manicured, so we have a lot of fuzz going on, and more power to them. But, there might even be crumbs from last meal still left in their beards. There was some extreme examples where there was noticeable food in their beards. And then you're going in for the greeting, and you're hitting the lips, but there's other things that come with that. It almost seems sometimes like it was a competition who could grow the biggest beard. And some of the men actually almost felt like the bigger the beard you had, the more holy you were. And so, you'd be running around the church, which this is all serious back then. But there was this elderly man in particular that he had a disease that caused his head to shake pretty significantly when he wasn't on his medication. And apparently that caused food to get in his beard. And the young men would literally watch for an opening so that they wouldn't have to greet him on the lips on the way out. So we would wait until he was, back off in the corner over here so we could right up. And sometimes I think he knew we were doing that because he would forge a path ahead and meet us halfway. And occasionally it looked like he had banana pudding up here by his lips from the meal he had just had before church, which was horrible in its own right. Also had another smacker that before he would greet, and we're talking about full-on greet on the lips, and we're not talking about just lightly bumping. We're talking about like a smackaroo. And this guy, I liked the man himself. He was an all right guy, but he would hold out his hand to shake it. And then, of course, the greeting was you shake hands, and as you shake hands, you pull together and just right together, And he would literally, as he grabbed your hand to shake it, he would wet his lips, go, and then he would smack you on the lips. And it was just, yeah, let me just put it this way. It was horrible. But we also had a visitor at one time in one of the churches that is a family that was not familiar with the Mennonite ways, and he noticed that the men were greeting men and the women were greeting women, but he didn't realize that they were not men weren't greeting women. So he goes over to the women's side, which is segregated seating, the men on one side, the women on the other. But Jesse decides that if men greet men, women greet women, he could have himself some fun. So he goes over to the women's side and starts trying to greet the women. So anyway, yeah, it made some pretty big waves. And so, you know, coming from where I came, I wanted that to be on hold because I was not ready for that. You know, and there's other things that go with that, like devotions in church and brethren's meeting where all the members get together and make decisions. So, but anyway, I had this private meeting with the bishop, and he granted my request and actually was very appreciative of it because he thought I was far too young for that. But at this point, you know, we were baking, and that was how we earned our living. And we would bake cookies, pies, bread, all of that. We would bake it Monday and Tuesday and go to town as Tullahoma, Tennessee, every Wednesday, and we would sell from door to door of each business. And I had this large box, and I would just stack as many baked goods as I could get into it. And we would go into, like, say, a bank, and you know, all the people would come out, whoever wanted to purchase anything, and they would say, oh, I want some brownies, or I want some cookies, or whatever it was, and we would sell it to them. And I was in this straw hat and hand-me-down shirts and suspenders, and I felt so out of place. But anyway, we did that for several months. Then there was a Mennonite family. They were very kind. They had built a house, a very small house, but they had built a house on their property, and they said we could live in it for as long as we needed to. And I'll remember that with appreciation for the rest of my life. They didn't have to do that. They cared. So we move out of this derelict mobile home, and we start baking in this house, and we go back to the old mobile home at some point. I can't remember what, to get something, I think. And we see, like, the very next day after we move out, the whole ceiling fell into the living room and just collapsed. It was all on the floor. And so it was a good thing that we moved out when we did. So we're in this new house, and of course there's no carpet, there's no AC, there's no ceiling fans, and we have 3 ovens going full time. And we're baking Monday and Tuesday. We go to Tullahoma, we sell on Wednesday. Then we come home and we can bake some things on Friday because they freeze. Saturday we can bake things that freeze. Go back to the old schedule. And it was very hot in that house. You know, we're talking midsummer Tennessee, windows wide open, but 3 ovens running. Anyway, we did this. It didn't matter if it was raining outside, we'd go to Tullahoma and sell. If it doesn't matter if it's cold or hot, we'd go to Tullahoma and sell baked goods. And we had to, you know, that was how we earned our living. That's how we were able to eat. So during this time, you know, I'm reaching out, I'm learning to know the church people. We had finished school by this point, and I meet these cult boys, and they're 2 miles down the road from us, and they're really primitive, but they're really accepting of us, and you know, good people, honest. And I become best friends with the middle boy. You know, we do everything together at some point. You know, it wasn't right away, but, you know, I'd seen them pulling trees out of a fence row with a tractor, and it was really dangerous, but they were having a blast, you know, and so you jump on board with that. People are having a good time, you have a good time with them. The oldest of the boys, of the cult boys, was Manasseh. So Manasseh Culp was if there's going to be a redneck of the Mennonites, it's going to be Manasseh. He loves trucks, he loves mud, he loves diesel smoke rolling out of tailpipes and out of smokestacks. He's kind of epic, to be real honest. But I didn't realize it at this point, but he had kind of like love at first sight with my sister. Aww. So Mennonite redneck Manasseh. But the Colt boys and I, we did a lot of stuff together. The middle boy and I, we had this chemistry lab that we would make all kinds of things. So I think the one time we made gunpowder, we experimented with many things. The Mennonites of that area all looked down on the Colt family. The Colt family was not good enough. They were too primitive, which is saying a lot because the Mennonites valued primitiveness, and the Colts were just so primitive that most of them kind of looked down on them. I didn't, because the Colt boys were strangely open to us as outsiders. They accepted us. and that was a rare thing for us. There are some good Manasseh stories coming up in the later episodes here, some that you will greatly appreciate. But for now, I'm going to leave it with that. Thank y'all and have a good night.